going forward in our series of Shiurim on the Sefer Daat Elokim as an introduction to Chachmas HaEmes. In the previous Shir, we explained about the Ian of the Yosher of Adam Kadmon and the Egulim of Adam Kadmon. Just to recap, we explained that Adam Kadmon is Bechinas Ratzon HaKlali, or the Keser HaKlali of the entire Malkum Ponai. In other words, basically you have something called an Ein Sof, which Kaviyachol is infinite, and within that you have a something called a Malkum Ponai, which is finite. With all the Olamais are going to be within that Malkum Ponai, because the Olamais by definition will be finite. So the first of all the Olamais we call Adam Kadmon. So this and everything is going to be totally in Adam Kadmon, if you will. Everything will be, because Adam Kadmon represents the Keser, or the Bechinas Ratzon, for all the Olamais later to take place. Now, Adam Kadmon is going to manifest itself in two ways, either Ayadei Bechinas Yosher or Bechinas Egulim. We explained that the Bechinas Egulim is the Bechinas Ruach, Bechinas Nefesh, and the Bechinas Yosher is the Bechinas Ruach. What that means is that you have a Malkum to be Mashbiah to, and you have the one that's being Mashbiah. In other words, just like you have an Adam, and then you have the Olam. Well, the Adam will be the Bechinas Yosher Shabai, if you will, whereas the Olam, the Bechinas Egul Shabai, that would be the Malkum. In fact, the way of looking at Igulim is sometimes the Rav explains that the Bechinas of the Heicholos, which are the chambers or the rooms, because sometimes we, in terms of the Kavanas of the Tefillas, we talk in terms of Heicholos, or rooms, because one of the Yonim of the Kavanas of the Tefillas is taking the Birurim, and we don't even know what Birurim are, but Lamaisa, it's taking Birurim from place to place, Kaviyachol, until we get them into Atzilus, where we can rectify them. So as we're on our journey, we're moving, if you will, from room to room to room, or from mokum to mokum. The Egulim and the Heicholos are the same, so remember that. So whenever you see the Ian of Heicholos and you see the Ian of Egulim, you should know that they are the same, and they represent the same concept. So therefore, it's the mokum by which Ak will be poil. So therefore, Ak being Bechinas Ruach, which is higher than the Bechinas Nefesh, will be poil on that eagle. So therefore, the Yosher will be poil on the eagle. And of course, in back of the Ak is going to be the Kav Ein Sof, of course, because the Kav is again the Ohr of the Ma'atzal, which is being Nicholas B'toicha Malkum Ponai. It's, as we said before, it's Bechinas, the lowest Bechina, and lowest quote unquote, because to just even talk like that. But the truth is, the Rav himself just talks like that. In Etz Chayim and Sharm and Beis, he explains that the Kav is the Bechina of the lowest Bechina of the Ein Sof, quote unquote. Ki'ilu, you could talk like that, because even the Rav is reticent to talk like that. But Sof Kol Sof, it's Ki'ilu that the lowest Bechina of the Elyon here being the Ein Sof, is mislamish itself in the highest Bechina of the Tachton. Highest Bechina of the Tachton will be Adam Kadmon. All right. Now, once we've established that Adam Kadmon is the Klolius Ratzon of all the elements that are going to come after that, and everything is going to come off of Adam Kadmon, we're going to explain the Olamais. We're now going to move into the Olamais that are going to be coming off of Adam Kadmon. Now, again, I have to just restate this, even though we've stated it before. The Rav explains in Etz Chayim that there are two ways to medam devar mel yonim. Because, in fact, let me even start even before that. There's a very big chilik between Chachmas HaEmes and Chachmas HaNigla. Now, the most notable aspect of that, in terms of difficulty, because there are no noisin by which you can give Chachmas HaEmes. What I mean to say is like this: that all of Niglas HaTorah has a Gashmistik noisa which carries it. L'mashal, like you have Hilchas Shabbos, so therefore you have Boirer, so therefore you will have various aspects of Boirer. Or let's say l'mashal, you will have, let's say in Nezikin, you will have various aspects of that. Or like l'mashal, like you will have literally my car crashes into your car, so therefore Mamela, that's going to be a physical thing. Kachim is like that. Even Taharis has that, because let's say the way the Kli is shaped, or the Maisa, or how many days is the woman counting, and things like this. Masha'ekein, when we're dealing in Chachmas HaEmes, we don't have this. In fact, the Rav in Shar HaMitzvahs explains that there are different levels of Torah learning. He explains that Mikra is Keneged Asiyah, and Mishnah is Keneged Devak, or Keneged Yetzira, and Gemara is Keneged Bria, and Chachmas HaEmes, or Kabbalah, is Keneged Atzilus. Now, we learned before that Atzilus and Bria are Keneged Chachma and Bina. And the difference between Chachma and Bina is the difference between Prat and the difference between Klal. The Chachma being the Klal and Bina being the Prat. You see, because and not only that, but Chachma not having a noisa. Mashenkin, the first noisa for that will be the bina. In other words, a person has an idea to build a house, but it's just an idea. It's not fleshed out yet. He has to go to the architect to draw up the plans. That's the bina. That's already the first semblance of some sort of hiskashimus of it. But before that point, there's no hiskashimus of that. So therefore, Atzilus Kaviochel is not within the Kli. It's outside the Kli, if you will, as opposed to Biyo, which would be within the Kli. Bri Yitzira Asiya, that is. So in other words, therefore, Chachmas Emes, we have no noisim by which to describe, so therefore we have to create noisim. And the noisim that we do create are either Tzuras Adam, which is what Adam Kadmon is, and therefore, or Tzuras Oisis, as we're going to describe now today in Daat Elokim, because we're going to talk about different Oisis and different Tzirufim of Oisis, because each Ois will be moira on an Ohr Prati. Not that Lamala there are these Oisis as they are here, but they represent various Koiches Al Yoinim, and therefore we can talk about them as such. And we can use these shemas as a way of representing them. One more thing, just while we're on the topic, the difference between Chachmas Emes and Niglas HaTorah. The Iker Inyan of Niglas HaTorah, Torah Sabriya, is to make chilukim. Now, if you'll notice in Gemara, that's what you're basically doing, because what Gemara does is you always have like Chacham B'may Askinan or Meis Fei. The Gemara will always ask, let's say, two Mishnayos on one another, or a Brisa on a Mishnah, and we mechalik. Every Im Tomer Yesh Loimer Taisus, which is probably come out right with Taisus in Shas, is based on this, where he basically will ask another Gemara somewhere else, and he'll come up with a chiluk between the present Gemara and the other Gemara, because we're saying that this is applicable in this case and this is applicable in that case. So basically, we're making chilukim, because what we're doing is we're breaking it down into pratim. But Chachmas Emes is not like that at all, because it's up in Atzilus. It's Torah Atzilus, and Torah Atzilus is the b'china of Klal. What we want to do with this Chachma is that we want to take all of these pratim that we're going to learn, and we want to put them together, and by putting together, come out with a coherent whole. But as Hashem Yisbarach, we will learn, and it takes a while to get to this point, but we will learn, Mitzvah Hashem, that all these various pratim are different ways of saying the same thing. And the truth is, the entire Kisvei Ari is really just one long drush. In fact, that's really the side of the Mishnah in Chagiga when it says that you don't give over Ma'aser Merkava only to a Chacham who may be Nadaitoi. The reason is like this. Chachma, remember, is the klal. It's the picture. Bina is the Mahaven Davar, the Toich Davar. It's the prat. And that's miyuchas to speech or to shmiya. When you say I hear, because when you speak, you talk in terms of prat. Das is the ability to synthesize all the various pratim and come out with the whole. So when the Mishnah says in Chagiga that you give over to a Chacham umevi medaita, it's because by definition, really, a Rebbe can never give over Chachma. A Rebbe can only give over Bina because he can give over his speech, and the speech is an element of Bina because he's dealing prat achar prat achar prat. The Talmud himself has to be a Chacham himself because he has to use his das and take together all these various pratim, which the Rebbe is being giving him, and unify them to come out with a coherent whole. And that's what the Chachma is. So a person can learn this limud, and a person can have many, many pratim. A person could know Etz Chayim very well and have all the pratim, but he could totally miss the point of the whole limud because he wouldn't be able to integrate these pratim into one whole and to see where the connectors lie and to see how very often times the Rav will be saying two things, and I said they would seem contradictory when really they're the exact same thing, just looked at in a different light. All right, so let's go weiter. We're holding on Daf Chaf Gimel in Daat Elokim, Anfei Ak. Okay, the anafim of Ak. Hine, ma'ak zeh, shuhu hana'atzol rishon, sheniskala achar tzimtzum ein soif. So from this Ak, which is the first created thing, after the tzimtzum the ein soif, mispashtim ke'anafim, kol alamis kolam. So all the alamis are mispashet, like anafim, right? Like branches. Because this will be koil everything in the tzimtzum, which makes sense, because I call totally b'ratzin. Everything's hanging on the ratzin. If the original ratzin was not there, then Mamela you would never move ahead. If a person didn't have a ratzin to listen to shiurim, he wouldn't be listening to them. Everything that comes after that is based on that original ratzin. There's no gila yet, of course, because it's only a pure ratzin. But saif kol saif, if the ratzin did not exist, what comes later cannot exist either. Now, this ak has to be mamayat the or, because what we're doing is acting as a buffer, as a barrier, a firewall, I guess you would say, in order to be mamayat the or. And the way it's mamayat the or in various ways, that the or will manifest itself differently. Remember, because the or is always shava. It's an important point to remember, and anybody who's familiar with the Siddur Rishash will know that, because we always represent the Oiris as the same. It doesn't make a difference whether we're dealing with washing your hands in the morning, the first of all in the morning, or whether we're holding by Yom Kippur Ne'ilah. The Ohr is always the same. It's represented by Havayas and Eikez Menukodes. But Seif Kol Seif, but the Kalim that's Nichlas to are different, because the way the Ohr manifests itself is different. And the way the Moichen, our Madrik the Ohr, are in different Ofanim. So, in essence, that's what we're saying over here. That the Ohr is the same, but has to be Mamayit in order to show itself in different ways. Ki al Ohr ein soif lios otzma oid. Since it's so large, lo yochel kol olamis lekabel b'pshutzoy. Zulasi b'mc is ak, only through this bechina of ak. Tahaina acharei is mayit v'nis chalak lebechinas protius v'tzeitzo derech nekavim v'tzinaris dakim shebekuf ak. So kaviochel we say as if the Ohr is coming out of different orifices of ak, because again we're using the mashal of tzuras adam, and of course we have to know not to be magashrim here. Chas v'sholom. K'moishis bar lefanenu. Now kumas ak, right? The chain called demus adam sheba'olam, and also every demus adam in the olam. Beharu kolam medala bechinas shal havaya. It's koilo from 4 bechinas of Havaya. Now, what is pshat? It's behechrach to be koilo dala bechinas of Havaya. What exactly does it mean by that? Well, Havaya is the bechin of Hayva, of the now, and that's called the Shema Etzem. There are other Shemas. Remember, in every Shem, we said before that every Shem represents a sphere or another way of understanding Kadosh Baruch Hu. But the Shema Etzem is Havaya. And the reason is because all those other Shemas are just different ways the Havaya itself manifests itself. Because that's why that's called the Shema Etzem as opposed to the other names which are lower, like Eke and Adnos and Elakim and Kel, Shakai. These names which are considered lower, and we're not even talking about Kinuyim now, we're talking about Shem Shadi Nimchokin, but Seif Kol Seif, they're Misasav off of the Havaya itself. Because, so the thing is that there are various ways the Havaya will show itself. Because, all right, you see, because we're going to learn in Mitzvah Shem that Havaya itself, Kaviochel, is a construct of Kadosh Baruch Hu. What it is, it's the way that a Kadosh Baruch Hu himself is Megala himself. But the Maisa, since the Kadosh Baruch Hu Kaviochel is B'Yachad Menei Obey with the Havaya, so the Mela Havaya is God. I'm reticent to say this, Lamaisa, but just we're not going to go into this at this point. If you'll learn more, you'll understand. Because we're going to see that Havaya is synonymous with something we call Zer Ampim of Atzilus, because that's where our connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu is at that point. But that's why the Havaya is critically important. Not only that, but the Havaya, like we said in the previous year, represents the Hishtalshlus of the Metzias. It represents Lamashal moving from the Ratzon stage into the idea stage, and which is the Yud of the Shem Havaya, and then moving from that into the Bina stage, which is the planning stage, which is the Kei Rishon of the Shem Havaya, moving from there into the actualization phase, which is the Vav of the Shem Havaya, and then from there moving into the Tachlis state, which is the Kei Achron of the Shem Havaya. But anyway, so this represents something coming from Elam into Gili, and that's basically what Akash Baruch Hu is doing here. Now, Dal Havayas Elu Shoyn Zume Zume Bechinas Mulein. Now, there are 4 different Havayas which are different in terms of their milui. Let me explain this. Milui is a hispashis or expansion of the Shem Havaya, and not Lavdafka Havaya, because we have this with other Shemas also, like we have an expansion, Marshal Melakim and Adnos and things like that also. But we're going to be Maka here now. We're going to mention four different expansions: the expansion of Ab, Sag, Ma, and Ben. And we're going to need to remember this because we're going to be coming up with these all of the time. Just as well, you know what? Let's first read this and then I'll explain. So let's first get it. Ketzad. Yesh Havaya b'mila Yudin. There's a way to write Havaya and spell it out with Yudin. Dahainu Yud Vav Dalet K Yud Vav Yud Vav and K Yud. Because you see, notice over there, the K Vav and the Yud are all spelled with Yudin. Ab. So that you add it up, you get Gematria 72. Yesh Havaya Acheres. There's another Havaya b'mila Yudin Gamhi, which is also mila Yudin, but it also Movad Ois Vav. Except for the Ois Vav Shabab and Maloi Ba'Aleph, because there the Vav has an Aleph in the middle. Kizeh. And there you have Yud Vav Dalet, K Yud Vav Aleph Vav, as opposed to Yud Vav and then K Yud. V'ikamatria Sag. This is what we call Sag. Yesh Havaya Shlishis. There's now a third Havaya, Melea Kula Ba'Alpin. That's the typical Havaya that we're used to. Kizeh, which is Yud Vav Dalet. Now K Aleph. Notice instead of the Yud. Then Vav Aleph Vav. Again, it's opposed to the Yud or opposed to the Aleph, and then K Aleph. V'ikamatria Ma. Kamatria Adam. The Havaya Revias, and there's a fourth Havaya, Va'oisis Kefulis, which is basically doubled. Yud Vav Dalet KK Vav Vav KK. So the reason way that works is because the Vav and the Dalet is Gematria Yud. It's Gematria 10, just like the Yud itself. And then the KK, Vav Vav and KK are just repetitions of the letters before that. He Gematria Ben, which is Gematria Behema. Dalet Havayas Elohim Keneged Dalet Bechinas. And these 4 Havayas are Keneged 4 different Bechinas, which are Taimim, Nekudas, Tagen, and Oisios. Taimim are being the trop or the inflection in the voice, well, as a word is sounded. Nekudas, of course, being the vowels, Cholev or Chelev, Lamashal. Tagen being the crowns, the Shatnez gates with the 3 Tagen, or the Beit Chayim with 1 Tag, and the Ochel Misperis that have no Tagen, and the Oisios are the Etzim letters themselves. Here, there's a lot to explain in this paragraph, so let me explain. Number 1, this Bechina of Miluyim. It goes like this. Again, since we said that in addition to being nimshal Dvar Mel Yonim in terms of Tzuras Adam, you could also be nimshal Dvar Mel Yonim in terms of Tzuras Oisios. So therefore, we will say that not just the Ikar Ois, but the expansion of the Ois will be nechla within the Ikar Ois itself. In other words, I'll give you an example, like the Gemara as opposed to the Mishnayos, because the truth is the whole Gemara is nechal within the Mishnayos, right? And the Chachma and the Chachma of the Mishnayos is the fact that all of the Gemara could be nechal there. So you could look at Gemara as an expansion of Mishnayos. So therefore, you would look at the Gemara as the milui of the Mishnayos, if you will. So therefore, within the Havaya itself, we will say that that Havaya itself can manifest itself in different oifanim. And therefore the expansion will be a lower level, if you will, because we'll say that what was included in the Pashut, which is without the expansion, like the Yud Kei Vav KSL Pashut, will also be in that Milui, in that expansion.
That's the Gilui.
Yeah, which will be a Gili of that of what was there Be'elam before. And of course the truth is it keeps on going forever because there's an expansion of an expansion also. You could have a Mili de Mili also, and you could have Mili de Mili de Mili also. But in general, we talk in terms of these 4 miluyim more than most others, okay, which are the Ab, Sak, Ma, Ben. Now, the reason why that is like this. Ab is the highest of the miluyim. It's Gematria Chesed, because Chesed is Gematria 72. What it does is it represents the highest form, because the Mili is Al Pi Yudin, and we know Yud corresponds to Chachma, because remember, Yud is a Goylem, and Chachma is Gematria Goylem, which is the Bechina of the idea without being fleshed out at all. And that's the Bechina of Av. So Av sometimes refers to Chesed, and sometimes it refers to Chachma. In general, we say that it's a Bechina of Chachma. The Havaya of Sag, on the other hand, is the Bechina of Bina, because that also is Mili Yudin, except for the Vav, because we say that in that Vav there's an Aleph, and that Aleph will be the Hatchala of the Ma, because the Ma will be where the Etzem Gile will take place. That will be where the Zer Ampim is, or the Vak. We're not familiar with these terms right now, but because that's Gematria Adam, because it's like this. Remember, in terms of our person building his house. So remember, we had Ratzain to build the house, which was Keser. We had the idea to build the house, which is Chachma. We had the plan to build the house, which is now Bina. That's the Kachab system, or the Gar, the Gimel Rishonos. Those are all called Mayachin, because there's no actualization yet that's taken place. Masha'en came when we're moving into the Vav of the Shem Havaya. The Vav represents the next 6 spheres, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, and Etz Chayim Yesod. Right, those 2 triads together, because those 2 triads are now going to build that house, and we're going to need all of them to build that house, and that's going to be represented by the Gematria Ma, because Ma is Gematria Adam, and that's going to be with that Aleph, because Aleph represents that. It represents a top and a bottom and a middle, because that's what an Aleph is made from, a top Nekuda, a bottom Nekuda, and something that bridges the gap between them, which is what the Adam really does. And then below that, the Tachlis, the Bechinas Malchus Shabai, that'll be Gematria Ben. Because Ben is like the Mechaber here said, is a Havaya Kfula, a double over Havaya, because that's really what Malchus is. Because Malchus is kind of basically the mirror image of what came before it. What it is it's the sum total of all the parts that came before it, and it's the image reflected back. And not only that, but sometimes we look at the Ben as Gematria Behema, because Ben is Gematria Behema. Besides Behema Tashia Hashem, because Ma can correspond to the Ruach, and the Nuk, or the Malchus, can correspond to the Nefesh, and the Ruach has to be Mesak in the Nefesh, like we explained in the previous year also, because it's like the nefesh of Bahamas, which has to be Mesukan Ayadei, the nefesh of Lakus. So in this context, the nefesh of Lakus would be the Bechina of the Ma, which is going to be piled on the Ben. And the truth is, the Ma and the Ben together because both of them together, because Ma can also represent Yosher in this context, and Ben could represent the Gulim, because the Ben being the Mokim by which the Ma can be Poyo. So both of them together make up Zman, which is Gematria 97, which is what we know and which is what we're familiar with, because Zman, time, is the process of Birur. It's the Hiskashmis of Birur, because what it is every second and every Rega is another Birur after another Birur. And this is the Seder by which HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided it should take. So every Zman, every moment, is made up of a Ma and a Ben, a unity between the two. Because Ma represents a male koyach, a koyach of Mashbiyah, and Ben represents the koyach of Makabel. Because Ma is the contractor building the house, whereas Ben is the house itself, which is being built. Masha'en came the Ab and the Sag, they're a higher Madrega. Ab, remember, is Kuli potentiality, because it's only B'chinas Yud, it's B'chinas Goylem. Sag, on the other hand, is potentiality also, but it's the beginning of a Gili. The Gra explains like this, because because Sag, which parallels Bina, is the shame for that is Eke. So the Gra in the second paragraph of Safra Nisa, he explains that the reason why Eke is the shame of Bina, because Eke is Ana is Damen is Galios, that I will be Magal, but not yet. And he explains that Eke is the Bechina of we explained, because it's a Ktsas Gili, but not a Gili yet. And that's the pshat when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, first Eke Asher Eke, that was going on, first Keser Chachma Bina, because Keser can also be called Eke Derech Agav. And then when he said Eke Shalcheni, right, that Eke sent you, that second Eke is like an Isha Kavyochel who's pregnant. So over there, the Gili is about to occur, meaning that there's going to be a Leda here. Of course, the Leda being the Leda of Klal Yisrael from Mitzrayim. So that's represented by the Ma. But I'm saying, there already is a Ksas Gili over here in the Sag, but not yet. In other words, obviously, if you have an idea for the house, or if you have the plans in hand for the house, the plans in hand for the house are more of a Gili than just the idea itself. So therefore, these four Miluyim, Ab, Sag, Ma, and Ben, represent roughly Chachma, and then Bina, and then the six lower spheres, from Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Yisod, which we call Zer Ampim, or sometimes we call them Tiferes. And then the Ben represents Malchus, and we have to remember this because we're going to use them all the time. Now, the last thing we said in this paragraph, Taimim, Nekudas, Tagin, and Oisius, I think we'll leave for the next year to explain what they are. Okay?